You may have heard this idea that chronic back pain is all in your head. And while I do believe that there is a lot of value in the idea, I also don't think it's entirely true. I struggled with chronic back pain for more than 10 years, so I learned this the hard way. But chronic back pain definitely has a really strong, maybe usually predominant part that's psychological, mental, and emotional, but the physical is also there. It's not either or here. It's not just one or the other. It's usually a combined, like, complex problem, which is why it's so difficult to deal with. But a lot of people simply refuse to accept this idea that chronic back pain may have a psychological component. This was me. Like, I was one of the probably the least accepting people of ideas of this sort. And I think this is also really common in people that are maybe more on the logical side. Maybe your job is kind of like logical. I'm a programmer myself. I used to write a lot of code back in the day. I'm mostly like, rational, logical, skeptical person. And this whole idea that chronic back pain may have something to do with what's going on inside of my head and my emotions, it was really difficult for me to accept that idea. It didn't really make a lot of sense to me. And I think I paid the price for that with unnecessarily years of back pain. I could have avoided that easily had I accepted this possibility that there is something more than just the physical part here. And that's why I think a lot of people may be more adamant and insist that chronic back pain is all in your head, because the people that are gonna essentially resist this idea are also the ones that are going to struggle with back pain more, I believe, especially when it comes to like a more complex chronic back pain issue. Now, first of all, is it possible that chronic back pain is a purely physical problem sometimes? I actually think this may happen for some people, especially if there's a clear cut moment, like a really sudden injury, where you see like a direct cause and effect between the injury and the pain. So maybe you've had an impact, maybe you've thrown out your back. Like, in some of these cases, and be mindful, like, not all of them, even in these cases, I think the problem can be mixed. But in some of these cases, maybe the problem is predominantly or mostly physical. And in these cases, like, the good news here is that the injury is kind of gonna heal on its own if you just don't do anything, completely irrational. If you maybe rest for a few days, you maybe even take some painkillers just so that you gonna reduce the pain and prevent it from becoming chronic, and prevent your nervous system to actually learn how to be in pain. If you just rest a little bit, pop a few painkillers, maybe do some rehab after that if you need. And honestly, like, you're probably going to want to strengthen your body, and especially your core and your back after that injury, because if you've suffered from a physical injury, and if the problem is physical, structural, you actually need to strengthen your body. That's a signal for you that maybe some of your muscles are weak, and if they continue being weak, the chance of another injury is greater. So it's really a good idea to actually strengthen your body. But even in a lot of these cases where there is, let's say, a clear moment, a clear injury, and that has resulted in back pain, I still believe there is some emotional and psychological component in this as well. And in a video I published about Dr. Sarno's work, he goes into a lot of depth on this as well. A lot of people, they think like it's some injury, or maybe they've tried to lift something heavy, or maybe they've thrown their back out, and they discovered that they still struggle with a lot of back pain for months or maybe even for years, because they don't address something that may be like the underlying root cause here. And I think that's actually a great litmus test as to whether your problem is physical or emotional or both. If you've maybe, let's say, had an injury and it's refusing to heal, maybe your back is hurting even weeks after the initial injury, that's usually a good sign that there's something more than just the pure physical problem here. Chances are you are going to have to deal with the psychological and emotional issues. Usually these can be things from your childhood, maybe some like unresolved challenges, issues. Maybe you've recently engaged in a negative pattern that's kind of like resonating and sounds similar to something that you faced in maybe your formative years. I think this is actually really common, and I think this kind of happened to me. This is how my back started hurting, because for me, in my case, like, there was no clear moment where I injured my back, and from that point onwards, it started hurting. I was just having a walk. I was doing my, like, I was even like pretty healthy at the time, and I was really like young. I was 24, 25, and completely out of nowhere, I just had a like a horrendous back pain attack. The first time I ever experienced pain like that, and I still believe that was a completely physical event. It must have been. Like, at that time, I refused to accept any other possibility. And only years down the line, when I finally accepted this possibility and I finally started to work on some of these issues, I noticed that my back pain was getting completely resolved. Now, is it possible that the chronic back pain is entirely in your head and it has no physical component at all? I actually think for some people that may be the case. It's probably difficult to describe the exact type of person who would be prone to this type of problem. But maybe if you're, let's just say, somewhat on the hypochondriac side of personalities, maybe you sometimes blow things out of proportion. Maybe you're prone to like anxiety and panic and, negative emotion. I think these people may actually suffer a lot from psychosomatic issues and problems. And this can be even not just chronic back pain. It can be other chronic problems or even other diseases completely, like uh, things that you would never even believe in a million years can be caused just by some sort of like suggestion, or maybe like a negative belief or a negative experience, emotional experience. But this is possible. Like, this happens every day to millions of people probably. And while I think this is possible, and I think for a lot of people actually chronic back pain is entirely an emotional and psychological issue. And by the way, this is also what Dr. John Sarno believed. And as per his like teachings, a lot of people completely healed their back pain when they first accepted this idea that maybe there is like a mind-body connection thing going on here, and then they maybe like worked a little bit on journaling and resolving the stress and the issues, and their back pain completely went away. If I had to estimate, I think probably like maybe 30 to 40% of people, it's purely an emotional or psychological issue, and maybe for 20% of people it's a purely physical problem, and whatever remains here, like maybe 50%, maybe even more, I would probably say like 60% of people, for them the problem is complex. It's both the physical and the psychological and emotional parts, which is why it's often so difficult to deal with it. That's why I actually recommend a combined approach. I usually recommend pursuing three main strategies or techniques, or actually sets of techniques. So I actually recommend you work on strengthening your body and working out and exercising. Also, fixing your nutrition, I think, is huge and often overlooked for a lot of people. And this includes losing a little bit of weight if you need to. And working on resolving the psychological and emotional parts. That's also a major key component. If you work on these three, I think there's no chance you're not going to heal. And I talk a lot about this in my free book. Check it out. Completely free. Link to it is in the pinned comment or description. You're going to see exact approaches on how to pursue all of these avenues. And also the next video that's going to appear above me is going to go into a little bit more depth on how to actually heal by pursuing all of these like three pillars of healing chronic back pain that actually work, that are proven to work. So check out the next video. I will see you there. And until next time, be brave.